and welcome to the Lovebird Lane podcast. I am Julianne and I can be found as Lovebird Lane on Ravelry and Instagram. Thank you so much for joining me. I did miss 2 weeks instead of just the one that I had planned. However, I do have a lot to talk about today. So there's been a lot of things happening in the last couple of weeks. Lots of crafting going on. And I don't know how long this is going to take me. Hopefully it is not too long. I have a few finished objects, some sewing, finally, and lots of knitting. So what happened on my week off? Pretty much just a lot of relaxing and a lot of knitting. I was hoping to get my rose cardigan finished during the week that I had off. However, it has not been finished, but I am very close. So I will talk about that in just a minute. Of course, like I said, some sewing actually happened. I spent the whole weekend sewing, so I have 2 finished sewn items. Only one of them is here to physically show you. I wore one of them earlier in the week. If you do follow me on Instagram, you would have seen it over there. But I did the typical Julianne thing and I spilled food down the front of my new dress. So it is in the wash. So that's not here to show you. I do have a couple of photos that I can pop in just to have, so you can have a look. We can have a chat about it. But yes, as for the physical item, it is not here. Marion is still inside because it's been a bit drizzly this morning, so she is being very noisy as per usual. I might just go close the door. And we're back. The door is now closed, so hopefully she won't be quite as annoying. I've tried fiddling with my ring light this week just to try and tone it down a little bit, because I either look like I am sweating because it is reflecting in my highlight, or I look completely fluorescently lit. So I've turned down the power on it today. I have the window right here next to me as well, so that's offering quite a bit of natural light, so hopefully I don't look completely blown out. I have changed my recording setup again. This time I'm using my iPhone. It is the 7 Plus model and apparently records in 4K, so I'm coming at you in 4K here. For all those people who actually have made the plunge and bought a 4K TV, which is probably not a lot of you. Certainly we haven't. But yes, so things are a little bit different today. I think you can see a little bit more of what's behind me. There is a water cooler, or not a cooler, but our water filter just there. So just so you know that I stay hydrated. So yes, what else did I do on my week off? Not much. I dyed myself some yarn, which everybody absolutely fell in love with over on Instagram. So it's very clear that I need to get more of that into the shop. Or at least some of it to begin with. There's 2 skeins going in tonight. Tonight is the shop update. But I only did 1 skein in each colourway, so people are possibly going to want more than 1 in each colourway, so that will have to be upcoming in future weeks. So just to get this out of the way as well, tonight, Thursday the 21st of November at 7 p.m. Australian Central Standard Time, Daylight Time, Australian Central Daylight Time, I will be having my update. So that is tonight. This should be uploaded this afternoon. So yes, get your running shoes on if you love any of those colours that I shared on my Instagram yesterday. I feel like I've got a bit of fibre on my eyelash. I don't know whether there is actually anything there, but I feel like there is. Alright, so I don't think anything else exciting happened. I think that was the point of the week off, was that nothing exciting would happen. And I think I pretty much stuck to that. So I guess we can get on to what I have finished. That's probably a good place to start. So I have a couple of yarny items and I have some sewn items. So I think I might go yarn first. We'll start with my oldest whip turned FO, and that is the Callitris tee. Now, if you remember correctly, you know that I was supposed to complete this as part of the test knit. However, at the time, I came down with a lot of pain in my arms and my hands, in my shoulders. I was at the point where I literally just had to sit with my arms straight, flat out, because I was in so much pain. I couldn't knit a whole lot. I couldn't do much of anything really. It was about the time that I was dyeing yarn for my Trader Spotlight, so I was doing heaps of self-striping. So I would say more than anything, it was probably like an RSI type injury. So I got my work done, because that was all I was doing, was getting the commitments that I'd made to others done, and any knitting for me kind of went to the side. The other issue with this too was also that I chose to do it in a linen cotton blend. This is Knit Picks Lindy Chain in the colourway Ash. And yeah, I used a 3.5mm needle, I think. I can't remember off the top of my head. But yeah, the stitches were quite tiny. Obviously, linen cotton yarn doesn't have a lot of give in it. Along with the excess use of my arms with all of that self-striping and all of that kind of thing. This was just the thing that was the nail in the coffin, and I just was not able to complete it. I said to Jess, I am so sorry. I have so much pain in my arms. I just can't even consider picking up any knitting, let alone finish this test knit. But I have now finished it. The other issue I was having too is I ran out of the original batch of yarn. So I've had to use a ball out of another batch of the same colourway, same yarn, different dye batch to do my sleeves. And I can see the difference between the dye batches. Simon is the only one I've really mentioned it to. He says he can't. I haven't had a good look at it since I blocked. Well, I didn't block it, I just washed it and kind of put it into shape, because it's linen, it doesn't stretch. You're not going to get a whole lot of blocking out of it. But I don't know whether it shows up on the camera. I think around about here is the point where I picked up the stitches to knit the sleeves down. And I could clearly see when I was knitting it that this ash here, the original dye lot, is a lot more of a warmer type ash, whereas the second dye lot is a lot more blue. So I don't know, like I said, I don't know if you can see it. Probably nobody is going to notice when I wear it. But yes, this is my Callitris tee. I have finished it, and I did do a small mod, and I got that mod from another test knitter. Words will come to me. Another test knitter, where she did increases in this garter stitch panel, so you can kind of see that it flares a little bit at the bottom. And because obviously I am of the larger consistency is not the right word, is it? I am of the larger variety, that's probably the better way to put it. I figured having the little flare just at the bottom would fit my hips better, because obviously I've got quite big hips. I'm very much a hourglass shape. I have the smaller waist, big hips, big shoulders, so I thought it was probably best for me to increase, have a little bit of an increased bit, a little bit of a flare, kind of an A shape, just to make it sort of float over my hips, if you will, when I wear this. I haven't actually tried this on yet, I've just realised. I finished it, I washed it, I brought it out to my craft area in the lounge room, tucked it away in the chests that I've been using to keep all my whips in the lounge room to keep them tidy. I was going to put it on my dress form and take some photos, but it got put in the chest and forgotten. So I grabbed it out today for the podcast. Hopefully I can remember to take some photos of it. So, as usual, this is a Sorbetto collective pattern. It is Jess Gore, who is my friend. And yes, it is her pattern. As always, very clear. The only problem, I wouldn't say it's a problem, but it's a necessary evil, is there's a lot of instruction in this t-shirt. It looks simple, but there's, like, as always with Jess, she thinks of everything and she makes everything so clever. there's a lot of words in it, and at times I did find it a little bit hard to follow because I couldn't remember which size I was, so I had to keep checking back to the beginning to, because I do most of my knitting on PDF, so I don't have one of those fancy ones that I can draw all over it and I can remember exactly what it is that I'm doing. So I'd kind of just have to memorize which size I am in the brackets. But because Jess has created such an amazing size range in this pattern, yeah, try to remember which, because you know, it's not just like you've got 6 sizes and you know that you're size 5. Like there's like so many sizes and I have to remember that I'm like, you know, size 9 along or something, you know. So I had to, that's probably the only issue that I had, was flicking backwards and forwards, finding my size and then finding the right set of instructions for my size, because not all sizes have exactly the same instructions all the way through the pattern. So I would definitely say, if I was to knit this again, I would print the pattern and I would mark it all up before I even start knitting, because that would just make it so much easier than what I did. So there you go. I haven't weighed my final ball. I didn't use, I think I probably only used about half of that last ball, so that's why I was kind of a little bit annoyed that I had to even go into another ball, but because I probably would have liked to lengthen this a little bit, because it might still end up being a touch short, but I didn't lengthen it just so I could try and get all of the knitting done. But yeah, I still had to break into yet another ball, so I haven't got a yardage on it, but yeah, it was about, I think, 6.5 balls of Lindy chain, and they're 50-gram balls. So yes, I will need to photograph this and then get it into the rotation and start giving it a wear. Alright, let's get on to my next finished project. Now this is going to be a touch hard to show you because it is being used. Now I showed off, I think in the last episode, the Touch of the Southwest blanket that I was crocheting. These are all my colours that I'm using. I think I might have 2 more balls that aren't here. But yes, so I wanted something because they were basically just sitting on my coffee table and just getting knocked off and rolled around and that kind of thing. I dug out some of the Karen Cross Pantone bulky yarn that I had, and I've since bought even more of that because it was down to $7 a skein, I guess you could call it, you know, at Spotlight when I went in on the weekend. So I actually made this little basket. Let's see if I can turn it over without losing all the yarn. So it's basically just a little striped basket and little handles, and I used the whole 5 little bumps of yarn to make this. I ran out at the very end, you can see here, I ran out of this pink to finish because it's like a slip stitch border along the top. So I ran out, I started, is it slip stitch? No, they were single crochet. I ran out, so I had to use the little bit of this bluey grey that I had left. And by the end I ran out of that too, so I did like a little slip stitch here just to even out even out the top of the basket. So this, yeah, it's been using, I knocked this out in an afternoon. I was having a very down day. I wasn't feeling very good. I didn't want to do anything. I just kind of went and sat in an armchair and just went, the world can just go away. I'm not interested. But as always, I like to be crafting so that I can get those little mental bonuses, those little wins that help my mental health from completely collapsing. And this was one of them. I looked up the pattern and yeah, knocked this out in an afternoon, and it's been super helpful, and I am definitely going to be doing more. I'm going to be crocheting a lot more of these, possibly 2 or 3 more. But yeah, this is the one I'm using at the moment, and it's just reminded me that I was going to show you my progress on my taste of a touch of the Southwest, and I've left it out in the other room, so I'll need to grab that as well when I start talking about whips. But yeah, that's my little basket. I believe it's by TLH Designs. It's just a free pattern on their blog. And yeah, it was really good. Really fun little project to do on an afternoon. Okay, let's talk about some sewing. The first one that I'm going to talk about today is this one. This is a Sorbetto top, which is by Colette Patterns or Seam Work. I'm not sure what they're going with these days, but this is a very old pattern of Colette Patterns. I've made quite a few of them. I think this might be my 4th or 5th. But this one is in linen. This is actually my very first garment in 100% linen, and I adore it. I think this is the pink that I showed you when it was still in fabric form a little while ago. Yeah, I knocked this out on Sunday. I had already cut all the pieces for the 2 things that I sewed over the weekend during the week, and I got down to sewing on the weekend. So I haven't worn this yet. I have tried it on. It's a little snug around the hips, I have to say, even though, I mean, it looks huge, but you know, I've got a big booty and hips, so you know. Yes, it is a little bit snug around those hips. I'm sure I can still wear it. But yeah, it's a little bit snug. I love this. The colours are just, oh, they just sing to me. The binding, if you recall, I showed off this fabric as well. I was going to make myself actually a sorbetto top out of that fabric, but turns out the size that I needed, I was not going to have enough. I looked at it, I tried. Being busty and hippie and being, you know, a plus size girl, I was, yeah, not gonna do it. So I decided for all of these, all of my current sewing projects, I would use that fabric as little additions, as contrast fabric, as bias binding, and that's what I've done. So I will take it off the hanger and I will show you the inside, because I know people like to see the inside of sewing. So you can see the front and the back, and I will turn it inside out. I feel like I'm on a very high energy today. I don't know why that is. I have only had my 1 coffee as per usual this morning, so it can't be that. But what I chose to do on this is I did French seams. Even though this fabric is maybe a little bit thick for French seams, I did forget to do the trimming step because I haven't sewn for so long, and I haven't done obviously French seams for quite a while, because I usually only do them on garments obviously, and most of what my sewing has been for the last year or so is just project bags for my shop. So I'm not going to go to all the effort of doing French seams on a bag that you're not even going to see those seams. I had a little bit of a brain fart and I forgot to trim. Yeah, so I had a little bit of a brain fart, and if you can see there, I'll try and get my head out of it. You see that little fluffy section just there in the seam? That was because I didn't trim the initial seam. So if you're not familiar, French seams are basically a double sewn seam, and the first seam is like right on the very edge of that little bump there. So that little flap that I've got, the seam is right on the very top. And then, so basically you sew it right sides out, because normally when you sew, you would want to sew wrong side out so that the seam and your seam allowance is on the inside of the garment. French seams start the opposite way round. So you want to sew your first seam with right sides out. Then you want to press it, you want to trim, just, you know, what do they call it? Trim? I guess trim works, but grade it, I think, is you grade down that seam allowance, then you press it the other way round, and then you sew it again so that all of the seam edges, like the raw edges of your fabric, are enclosed inside this little flap. So I did French seams on the sides and the shoulders, and obviously bust darts, and And I think possibly I should do a full bust adjustment on this pattern, because bust darts are supposed to point towards the apex of your bust, if you get my drift, towards that nip line. But these are quite a bit further down on my breasticles, I guess you could say. Yeah, so the darts don't really point where they're supposed to. But yes, I've never had a lot of success doing full bust adjustments. I usually just pick a size based on my upper bust measurement, and then I have a look at the finished garment measurements, and if my full bust measurement will fit inside that finished bust measurement based on my upper bust measurement. Does all that make sense? Clear as mud? If it fits, I'll sew that size that fits my upper bust, that measures for my upper bust. So that's what this does. The full bust measurement of the finished item is big enough to encompass the breasticles. So yeah, so I've got bias binding. I made some bias binding on Sunday morning. It was about the first thing I did when I got up, was to create this bias binding. And yeah, I just worked on this all day, and I have to say, guys, I don't know why, but these two items that I have sewn this weekend are literally the best quality garments I have ever made. I started sewing back in January 2013, I believe it was, and I've made clothes through the time. I used to put a lot of them on my blog on mymuddlings.com. If you go on there, you'll see lots of very old photos of me with some clothes that I made. And I think part of the reason that I stopped making my own clothes was because I wasn't happy with the quality that I was doing them, and because I think at the time it was like when you get a new toy, you want to play with it all the time. So I was just wanting to sew, and get things out as quickly as possible so that I could wear them and that kind of thing. And but this last weekend, obviously because I haven't made any clothes for myself for such a long time, I kind of slowed down a bit, I think. And I had a couple of points where I didn't do the best job, but it was enough, like it was good enough to get by on having a fairly decent quality garment. But I picked them out. I picked out those seams and I redid them because I just sort of really felt like I wanted to do a really good job, and I think I did, and I'm really, really pleased with the sewing that I did on the weekend. I have another top and a pair of culottes that I really want to get made pretty soon, so I think this weekend maybe I'll cut out some pieces so I can sew them next weekend. So I'm really enjoying my sewing again now. I've kind of got the bug, and I'm loving the linens that I bought. Let me just hang this up, and I can start talking about the next thing that I finished. I finished my Fen dress. That was one of the patterns that I showed you guys a couple of weeks ago, maybe a month ago now, I think. It was the one previous to the last episode, I think, when I spoke about my sewing plans. And yes, I really wanted to make the Fen dress, and my goodness, guys, I love this dress. There's only one downside, and it's a little short, and that's about it. Other than that, I really, really love this dress. I wore it out on Monday. I went into town and I met up with my very lovely friend Shelley. I don't know if she watches, but if you do, hi Shelley. She is Mrs. Pickle Pop on Instagram and on her Etsy store. And we had a lovely day. We went and had a knit in the art gallery, and then we wandered up to Rundle Mall and had a look at a couple of little shops in there, and then just sort of headed home. It was very much a introverted kind of meetup. We decided that Shelley is an introverted extrovert, so when Okay, let's try this again. Apparently my phone stopped recording. very weird. I don't know why it would do that, but it stopped recording. I had a cry. Well, I didn't have a cry. Yeah, for some reason it stopped recording after 25 minutes and 30 seconds. I have plenty of space on my phone, but for some reason it stopped recording. So I'm going to have to go over some of the stuff that I've already spoken about. And I was in rare form earlier. I don't know whether that form is going to continue now that I've had a little bit of break. I had to have a coffee, just have a relax, because initially when I checked my phone there was no file whatsoever, so it must have been rendering it in the background, and then it showed up with 25 minutes of the footage of about 35-40 minutes that I had recorded, so I lost a little bit. So I'm hoping that, fingers crossed, everything will record from now on. So I believe the last time I was talking was, I was talking about meeting Shelley in town. That was a really lovely day. I can't remember what else I said, so I'm not even going to try and repeat it. I'm just going to continue on. Yeah, I was talking about my Fen dress. Apart from it being a little bit short, it is amazing. I love it so much, and there will be so many more in my wardrobe. It was relatively simple to make. It had complex parts because that neckband, I'd never actually done one of those before. I've usually only done like necks that can be bound with bias binding, like the Sorbetto top, and to actually do like a neckline like that, I've never done it before. So I've always kind of steered clear of it because I'm always worried that I'm going to stretch the neckband too tight and it's going to pucker, or not stretch it enough and it's going to be wavy. So I've always kind of tried to avoid them. But I actually didn't even realise that this one had a neckline quite like that. So I didn't realise until I was about to put it in, which is probably the best way to be. And yeah, it worked fine. A lovely friend of mine from Melbourne saw the photo on Facebook, and she said that her comment was that neckline is everything. So I guess that means I did a good job. That was a very lovely thing for her to say. And so let's talk about the pockets. The pockets were another thing that was kind of a little bit funny on that dress, because I'd always decided to use that fabric that we spoke about, the binding on my Sorbetto top. I'd always intended to use that as a contrast pocket lining for that dress. However, I didn't make the connection that the back pocket linings would be visible on the outside of the dress. So I just cut out my pocket pieces, and it wasn't until I went to sew them that I'm like, well, hang on, that means that's going to be on the outside. And to be honest, it was a massively happy accident, because I actually adore those pocket contrast pieces. So yeah, it was a very happy accident. I was incredibly happy with the way those turned out. Yeah, but I'm just going to add a little bit of length because I don't know whether the bodice has lengthen and shorten lines on it, but I know the skirt definitely does. So I'm definitely going to be lengthening the skirt. I'm possibly going to be finding out a way to lengthen the bodice a little. Potentially I could grade down to the neck size and just add a little bit of length, keeping the same dimensions of width, just to ensure, because I have large breasticles, so yes, it holds the whole dress up because the fabric's got to go over my boobs. So yeah, that's probably the only thing that I would do differently, is to put a bit of length in it. And I'm really enjoying wearing the fabric. It was a linen and cotton blend that I made my Fen dress out of, whereas my Sorbetto top is 100% linen. And it was so breezy to wear the other day. It was like a 29-degree day, and I didn't really get sweaty at all. It was very comfortable. I got a little bit sweaty on my back because I was wearing a backpack, but other than that, it was very breathable, very wearable, nice and cool for the hot day. I was wearing my Chub Rub shorts so that I could keep my legs nice and chafe-free. So yeah, I love it, and I will be making more. So probably have put some photos in, and hopefully you got to see my ultra classy art gallery art gallery toilet photo, you know, keeping it classy by only having photos taken in, you know, posh bathrooms like the art gallery. So yeah, so hopefully you've seen it. I absolutely love it, and I know I have already enabled another person to grab that pattern and make it, and she did a similar thing to me with the contrast pockets. So not that I am the first person to do that. I actually noticed when I was looking back on the pattern page while I was getting the link to put in today's show notes, there is actually a version on the pattern page that has got the contrast pocket. So I was like, see, somebody else has thought of it before I accidentally did it. So yes, Fen Dress, definitely check it out. That's by Fancy Tiger Crafts. And the last thing that I really have to talk about is some spinning. And before I get on to that, I will do my spruiking again, because I know I did this spruiking last time. If you recall, I bought an eSpinner Super Jumbo, an Ashford one from Green Living Australia back at the end of financial year, because they had like a tiered savings thing, and because I know often you can't get Ashford products at any kind of discount. I've not seen them from Ashford themselves, but Green Living Australia sells all of Ashford's stuff, all of their spinning wheels, looms, all of that kind of thing. And if you spend over $200, I believe, there is 15% off. So I actually got an eSpinner 3 because I have had all sorts of trouble. I might have talked about it before. The Super Jumbo pulls very hard, and I think it's in my previous footage where I was talking about having very, very sore arms and hands. That is a thing that reoccurs with me. I have been tested for inflammation, and I've had all that sort of thing tested for. Apparently there is nothing wrong with me. So there's no point suggesting that, because been there, done that. I think I just get RSI from all of the work that I do with my arms. Yarn is quite labour intensive, with you know, warping, dyeing, all of that kind of thing. It's actually quite labour intensive, and people don't realise that. I was shocked actually when I realised how labour intensive yarn dyeing is. So yeah, anyway, because I have that pain and often weakness in my hands, the Super Jumbo, I haven't been able to do a proper spin on it. I've plied on it and it's fantastic for plying. However, spinning, not so much, because the big heavy bobbins, and it's bobbin driven, and it just rips the fibre straight out of my hand, and I just don't have the grip to be able to hold on to it, and I end up getting hand cramps and things like that when I do. So it wasn't ideal for the reason I bought it. So what's the word? I really want to get more hand spun, hand dyed yarn into the shop, and I want to kind of create that as part of Okay folks, I have had the worst time today trying to record on my phone, and it turns out it's because the phone was full. So I've spent the last 2 hours trying to delete photos and all sorts off my phone, so I am kind of over everything, to be honest. So this podcast is obviously not going to come out on a Thursday. I'm not sure when it's going to come out, but I'm going to just whip through what I have left just so I can round out this podcast with everything that I've been working on. I'm pretty sure I've been through all of the things that I finished, apart from this yarn. This is some merino and Corriedale. They were little slivers of fibre that came with my Super Jumbo eSpinner that I was talking about somewhere in there. It's been so long since I was recording, I can't actually even remember. But yes, this is merino and Corriedale. There were slivers that came with my Super Jumbo. I spun this yesterday on my brand new eSpinner 3. I'm not sure if I spoke about that, whether that was recorded or not, but I got it in Green Living's current sale that they have on at the moment. So I have an eSpinner 3 just so I can have a little bit more, try and get a lot more actually hand spun and hand dyed yarn into the shop. Alright, I'm going to quickly whip through what I have been working on, which is 4 things, I think. I forgot to bring a taste of the a taste, I can't remember, of the Southwest, the Afghan that I've been working on. But I haven't done a whole heap on that, I don't think, since you saw it last, so I'm not going to bother going to find it because I'm just going to go through what I have here because I've had the most frustrating day. I was almost not going to podcast today because I really wasn't feeling it, and I thought, no, do it, and then I've had nothing but problems. So forgive me, I am just going to run through. So I've been working on a couple of pairs of socks. You've seen one of them, the ones that I've been doing for Simon. I can't remember whether you saw, but I have a finished sock, and this is Circus Tonic handmade, and it's Emu Mallee Wren, I believe, is the colourway. So I have finished one sock, and this is a merino bamboo base. And I am working on the second sock, and I don't think I'm hugely far down, no. I've got double pointed needles sticking into everything. So yes, I'm just down past the ribbing on the second sock, and there's my ball of yarn. And I'm also knitting a pair of socks now for myself as well. Hannah from Circus Tonic Handmade posted the other day that she will be moving to Adelaide, so she'll be more local to me then. However, she's not sure if or when her shop will be reopening, whether she'll be dyeing yarn anymore, which is kind of a bummer because Hannah is one of my favourites. So anyway, she released a colourway called Intermisson, which I'm assuming is referring to the fact that she's taking a hiatus. And this is what I have here. This is on her Fate sock base, which I think is an 80/20 merino nylon base. And this is in Intermisson batch 2. So yeah, I cast on a pair of socks myself because this came in the mail earlier in the week. I think it came on Monday, and yeah, I love the colours so much I really just wanted to cast these on straight away. So it's just another pair of vanilla socks. And I mentioned earlier that I have been working on my rose cardigan, and I hoped to have it finished by the time my leave was over, my week of break was over, but unfortunately it was not. It is very, very close though. And finally, the very last thing I have been working on, Granger has come back to make clippy noises, is another sweater, and it is by Churchmouse Yarns and Tees. It's called the Slouchy Pullover, and this is some really old deep stash, and it is Lion brand homespun. And I was just kind of really digging the colours. I've always liked the colours of this one and was looking for something I could make out of it. And this is pretty much just a long form drop shoulder sweater. And yeah, it's just in pieces. So this is, I'm working on the front at the moment, I think, or the back, I can't remember. They're both pretty much the same until the point where you get to the increases. So yeah, that's kind of as far as I've gotten. It's just stockinette backwards and forwards. And yeah, I'm just picking this up when I get the urge. I'm mostly working on my rose and the socks at the moment. So now that I've whipped through that, I think I'm just going to leave it there. I've had no end of frustrations today. I don't know how frustrating the editing of this is going to be. I'm hoping I can still get this out today. I don't know that I will, but if I do and you're interested in the update, head over to Instagram, and I'm Lovebird Lane over there, and you can see all the yarns that will be available in tonight's update. Thank you so much if you did shop the update, if you're seeing this after Thursday. I'm really sorry I had to do this weird, broken, messed up podcast. I know the first part I was actually in quite good form. I was having a great time, and now I'm just to the point where I just want it over and done with, and I'm really sorry for that, but I'm sure you can understand how frustrating issues with technology are. So I am going to leave it there. I love you all. Thank you so much for hanging with me. Thank you so much for sticking around. And yeah, I hope you all have a fantastic week. Happy knitting, happy crafting, and I will catch you in the next one. Bye.